The story, my mom deceived me all my life, and that's why I left home and they looked for me for a very long time. A life of deception. I was always close to my mother, or so I thought. Growing up in a small, close-knit town, she was my best friend and confidant. My father had passed away when I was young, and it was just the two of us against the world. Or so I believed. From an early age, I was told stories of our family's hardships and triumphs. My mother was a master storyteller, weaving tales that captured my imagination and shaped my perception of the world. She spoke of my father's bravery, our ancestral roots, and the sacrifices she made to ensure I had a good life. I believed every word. As I grew older, I noticed inconsistencies in her stories. Small details didn't add up, but I dismissed them as mere lapses in memory. After all, my mother was the most honest person I knew, or so I thought. The revelation. One day, while rummaging through the attic, I stumbled upon an old, dusty box. Inside, I found letters, photographs, and documents that painted a very different picture of my family history. The man I thought was my father was someone else entirely, and the life my mother described was a fabrication. My real father was alive and living just a few towns away. I felt a rush of emotions: betrayal, anger, confusion. How could my mother lie to me about something so fundamental? Confronting her was the hardest thing I had ever done. Her response was evasive, filled with half-truths and excuses. The trust between us shattered in an instant. Leaving home. The deception was too much to bear. I packed my bags and left home, determined to find the truth about my past and my real father. I took a few essentials, some money I had saved, and the determination to uncover the life that had been hidden from me. Life on the road was tough. I slept in motels, ate at cheap diners, and traveled by bus and hitchhiking. Every step took me closer to the truth and farther from the life I once knew. The search for my real father was long and arduous, filled with dead ends and false leads. Yet, I pressed on, driven by the need to understand who I truly was. The search. Meanwhile, my mother was frantic. She filed a missing person report, enlisted the help of friends and family, and scoured the state looking for me. She was relentless, using every resource at her disposal to track me down. Her efforts were fueled by guilt, fear, and a desperate need to make amends. A turning point. One day, while staying in a small town, I met an old man named Frank. He was kind and wise, and he offered me a place to stay and a job at his diner. Frank became a mentor, guiding me through the emotional turmoil and helping me find clarity. With his support, I was able to piece together the fragments of my past and locate my real father. The reunion. Meeting my real father was a surreal experience. He was nothing like I had imagined, but he was honest and open. We spent hours talking about the past, filling in the gaps left by my mother's lies. He explained why he had been absent and how he had tried to contact me over the years. It was a bittersweet reunion, filled with both joy and sadness. Returning home was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. The familiar streets and faces brought back a flood of memories, both good and bad. My mother greeted me at the door, with tears streaming down her face. We stood in silence for a moment before she enveloped me in a tight hug. It felt like both an apology and a plea for forgiveness. We spent the next few weeks in intense conversations, unpacking years of lies and misunderstandings. My mother admitted that she had fabricated stories to protect me from truths she thought would be too painful. She had believed that keeping me in the dark about my real father would shield me from the complexities of adult relationships and her own failings. In her mind, she was protecting me. But the deception had backfired, causing a rift that seemed almost impossible to mend. Living under the same roof again was challenging. Every corner of the house held memories that had been tainted by her lies. The trust that had been shattered would take time to rebuild. We tiptoed around each other, both unsure how to navigate this new, raw reality. Despite the tension, there were moments of genuine connection. We shared meals, went on walks, and slowly began to find common ground. I started to see my mother not just as the woman who had deceived me, but as a flawed human being who had made mistakes. Her vulnerability and remorse were evident, and I began to understand the depth of her guilt and regret. During this time, I also reconnected with old friends. They had been worried about me during my absence, and their concern was a balm to my wounded heart. I shared bits and pieces of my journey with them, finding comfort in their support and understanding. They reminded me of the person I had been before the revelation, helping me to reclaim parts of myself that I had lost along the way. One of the most significant steps in my healing process was meeting with a therapist. Talking to a professional allowed me to untangle the complex emotions that had built up over the years. My therapist helped me see that my mother's actions, while misguided, were rooted in fear and love. This perspective was crucial in my journey towards forgiveness. My relationship with my real father also continued to evolve. We kept in touch through phone calls and occasional visits. He was patient, allowing me to set the pace as I navigated my conflicting emotions. Gradually, we began to build a relationship that felt authentic and meaningful. He shared stories of his own life, his regrets, and his hopes for the future. These conversations were healing, providing a sense of closure and a new beginning. As months turned into years, the pain of my mother's deception began to fade. Our relationship, though forever altered, grew stronger in its own way. We learned to communicate more openly, to express our feelings without fear of judgment or rejection. The bond we forged was different from the one we had before, but it was real and grounded in a deeper understanding of each other's humanity. I also found new passions and pursuits. The journey had taught me resilience and self-reliance. I returned to school, pursuing a degree in psychology, driven by a desire to help others navigate their own emotional struggles. This new direction gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. Looking back, I realized that the pain and betrayal had been a crucible, forging a stronger, more authentic version of myself. The experience had stripped away illusions, forcing me to confront the truth and rebuild my life from the ground up. It had taught me the value of honesty, the power of forgiveness, and the importance of understanding and compassion. My story is not one of a perfect resolution, but of growth and transformation. My mother and I continue to navigate our complex relationship, ever striving for greater understanding and love. My father and I continue to build our bond, finding joy in the moments we share. And I continue to move forward, embracing the lessons of the past while forging a future on my own terms. In the end, the journey was not just about uncovering the truth, but about discovering my own strength and capacity for forgiveness. It was about learning that, despite the deepest betrayals, it is possible to heal and rebuild. It was about finding my own path, one step at a time, and creating a life that is true to who I am.